"Papa, can I eat with you?" The voice was so soft, it almost vanished amidst the elegant murmur of the restaurant. The clinking of glasses, the hushed conversations, and the instrumental music that seemed to envelop everything in a distant bubble of luxury. Yet, that question pierced the air like an arrow, aimed directly at his heart. The millionaire slowly lifted his gaze. Before him, hands clasped delicately at her chest, large eyes brimming with a blend of hope and fear, stood a street girl. Her beige dress was slightly crumpled, her sandals worn, her blonde hair tangled by the wind. But her eyes held something the millionaire could not ignore. On his table, a meticulously arranged plate rested beside a sparkling glass of white wine under the warm garden lights. Everything was perfect. Everything was in its place, except for this girl. For a few seconds, that stretched into eternity. No one breathed. Behind the millionaire, an elegant couple widened their eyes in astonishment. Another woman brought a hand to her mouth as if witnessing something forbidden. A man muttered something about security. The atmosphere tensed, yet the millionaire looked at no one else, only at her. The girl spoke again, almost a whisper. "I haven't eaten today, but I promise not to disturb you." The silence grew heavier than gold, and in that instant, something stirred within the millionaire. Something that had been dormant for years. But what he didn't yet know was that this simple question would force him to confront a truth he had avoided his entire life, and what this child carried with her would change his destiny forever. If this story has already touched your heart, subscribe to the channel right now, so you don't miss any story that transforms your way of seeing the world. And before continuing, tell us in the comments from which city you are listening to this story. We want to read you. The millionaire looked at his plate again, then at the girl, and instead of calling the waiter, he did something that left everyone speechless. He gently pulled his chair back. "Sit," he said softly. The girl didn't move at first. She seemed unable to believe it. "Really?" she asked. "Yes, but first, tell me your name." "Sophia." The millionaire felt a strange pressure in his chest. That name held echoes of the past, echoes he had tried to silence for years. Sophia sat down carefully, as if fearing that at any moment someone might change their mind. Her hands were small, a little dirty, but trembling more from nerves than cold. The waiter approached hastily. "Sir, this is not appropriate." The millionaire raised a hand without looking at him. "Bring her a plate identical to mine." The murmur around them intensified. Some looked with disapproval, others with morbid curiosity, some with genuine surprise. But the millionaire did not take his eyes off the girl. "Where are your parents?" he asked, his tone serious. Sophia lowered her gaze. "I don't have a father, and Mama is sick." That phrase hit harder than any social criticism. The millionaire felt a knot in his throat. It wasn't guilt, it wasn't pity, it was recognition, because in those eyes there was something familiar, a mixture of pride and hunger, of dignity and need. "How old are you?" Five. Exactly the same age his daughter would be if he hadn't allowed pride to destroy his marriage years ago. The thought appeared unbidden. The millionaire had built empires, signed multi-million-dollar contracts without hesitation, dismissed executives without a blink, but at that moment, he didn't know what to do with a child who simply wanted to share a table. The plate arrived. Sophia looked at it as if it were a treasure, but didn't start eating immediately. She looked at the millionaire first. "Are you sure I can?" The millionaire nodded, and when she took the first bite, something unexpected happened. It wasn't the scene, it wasn't the stares of others, it wasn't the gesture of charity. It was the way she closed her eyes as she tasted the food, as if it were the best gift in the world, as if she wasn't accustomed to such things, as if each bite were a miracle. And the millionaire felt something he hadn't felt in years: shame, not for having money, but for never having looked beyond his own walls. "Do you always eat here?" he asked. Sophia shook her head. "Only when someone lets me stay nearby. Sometimes I leave before they make me." The millionaire pressed his lips together. "And today, why did you approach me?" The girl hesitated, then looked at him intently. "Because you looked like someone I knew." The millionaire's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" "My father," she whispered. The world seemed to stop. At another table, someone dropped a fork. The millionaire felt the air grow denser. "Your father is?" "I don't know," Sophia replied with a sincerity that stung. "Mama says he left when I was a baby, but I believe he'll come back someday." The millionaire looked away for a second, not because he didn't want to see her, but because for the first time in a long time, he feared someone was seeing him inside. "What if he doesn't come back?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Sophia shrugged with a mixture of innocence and forced maturity. Then I'll learn to be brave alone. That phrase pierced the millionaire like a mirror, because he had learned to be strong, but not brave. The difference was enormous. Strong was closing the heart, brave was opening it. And in that instant, the millionaire began to suspect that this girl had not arrived at his table by chance. There was something more, something he still didn't understand, but which would soon force him to confront the past he had buried under contracts, travels, and silence. Sophia continued eating slowly, politely. She didn't devour it. She didn't ask for more, only offered gratitude with her eyes. And the millionaire felt that each second beside her dismantled a part of the armor he had built for years. However, what he didn't yet know was that someone, not far away, was watching the scene with contained tears, and that person knew a secret that would change everything, because that child had not chosen this table by chance, and that night would not be just any dinner. It would be the beginning of a truth the millionaire never imagined hearing. And when that truth came to light, nothing would ever be the same. Sophia finished the first plate with a delicacy that didn't match the life she seemed to lead. She left nothing, asked for no more, just took a small sip of water, and looked at the millionaire as if thanking him for something much greater than the food. The millionaire was not accustomed to such looks. He was used to interested glances, calculating looks that evaluated how much they could get from him, but not this one. This was a clean look, a look that didn't ask for money, only presence. "Does your mother know you're here?" the millionaire asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Sophia shook her head softly. "She's resting. When she wakes up, her chest hurts a lot, and she gets tired." The millionaire felt an uncomfortable pressure in his stomach. "Is she sick?" The girl nodded. She says, "It's something in her heart, but I think it's sadness." That answer was not typical of a 5-year-old. "I will." The millionaire stopped breathing for a second. Sadness. That word was too familiar to him. He had seen sadness in the face of the woman who once loved him. He had seen sadness when he decided to prioritize contracts over birthdays. He had seen sadness the day he heard the word divorce, but he had chosen not to look back. The millionaire had converted pain into productivity, abandonment into ambition, guilt into corporate expansion. And now a little girl in front of him spoke of sadness as if it were a physical illness. "Where do you live?" he asked cautiously. Sophia pointed towards the main street. "In a small room. Mama says it's temporary." Temporary. The millionaire knew that word well. Many times he had said his absence was temporary, his travels were temporary, his distance was temporary. But years were not temporary, nor were wounds. The restaurant remained in a hushed silence. Some diners pretended not to look, but no one was indifferent. The millionaire noticed a woman in the back observing them intently. It wasn't a curious gaze. It was an intense one, as if she were waiting for something. "Does your mother work?" he asked. Sophia hesitated. "She used to. Now she can't do much." The millionaire began to feel that each answer opened a door he preferred to keep closed. "And how do you eat?" Sophia looked at him with brutal honesty. "Sometimes we eat, sometimes we don't." The phrase fell like a sentence. The millionaire had investments in 3 countries, accounts that grew even while he slept, properties he never even visited. And in front of him was a child who measured her life in sometimes. Sometimes we eat, sometimes we don't. For the first time in years, the millionaire felt that success did not fill any real void. "Why did you come to my table specifically?" he asked softly. Sophia looked at him intently. "Because you were alone." That answer caught him off guard. The millionaire looked around. There were people, there was noise, there was luxury, but yes, he was alone. And when someone is alone, Sophia continued, they need company. This child wasn't asking for food, not for money, not for charity. She was offering something, presence. The millionaire lowered his gaze, remembering nights in 5-star hotels where the silence was louder than any city. He remembered long tables with executives where no one talked about anything real. He remembered the echo of his own empty house and understood something uncomfortable. He had built a life surrounded by people, but without anyone. "Are you afraid of being alone?" he asked. Sophia shook her head. "Not when I think my father might be somewhere thinking about me." The millionaire felt the air grow heavier. "Do you miss him?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "Even though I don't know him?" "Yes." That phrase was like an unforgiving mirror, because the millionaire knew what it was like to be missed by someone he had chosen not to see. He knew what it was like for a daughter to ask why daddy wasn't there. He knew what it was like to hear excuses and choose work. The past began to knock on the door of his consciousness. but he still didn't know that door was about to open completely. Suddenly, Sophia did something unexpected. She extended her small hand towards the Millionaire's. "Thank you for letting me sit with you." The contact was minimal, but sufficient. The millionaire couldn't remember the last time someone took his hand without expecting something in return. He couldn't remember the last time he felt tenderness without strategy. In that instant, the waiter returned. Uncomfortable. "Sir, the manager wants to speak with you." The millionaire slowly stood up. The restaurant fell silent again. "The child is with me," he said firmly, "and no one is going to remove her." It was the first time in a long time that he defended something that didn't generate profit. Sophia looked at him as if he were a hero, and that made him uncomfortable because he knew he wasn't. At least not yet. "Does your mother know you're looking for your father?" he asked, resuming the conversation. Sophia lowered her gaze. "Mama says we shouldn't bother someone who doesn't want to stay." That phrase was a direct hit because the millionaire had been exactly that. Someone who didn't want to stay. "But I think," Sophia continued, "that sometimes people leave because they are afraid." The millionaire felt something break inside. Fear. Yes, he had been afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid of failing. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of loving more than his pride allowed. And out of fear, he had lost more than he would ever admit aloud. "And do you think your father is afraid?" he asked. Sophia looked at him with a wisdom that didn't match her age. "Yes, but someday he'll be brave." The millionaire couldn't hold her gaze because at that moment he understood that the girl wasn't just talking about her father. She was talking about him. But there was still something more. Something that didn't fit. Something in Sophia's eyes, in the way she looked at him, in the way she seemed to recognize him. And then something happened that left him completely still. From the other side of the restaurant, the woman who had been observing them began to approach slowly. Her steps were firm, her gaze intense, her eyes moist. Sophia saw her first, and her expression changed. "Mama." The millionaire felt the world spin a little slower. The woman stopped a few steps away. She didn't seem surprised. She seemed determined. The millionaire looked up at her, and something within his memory ignited. He had seen those eyes before, had heard that voice in another time, had felt those hands tremble from his absence. But it couldn't be. Not after so many years. The woman took a deep breath. "I didn't know I would find you like this someday," she said, her voice restrained. The millionaire felt that the past he had so carefully buried had just sat down in front of him in the form of truth, and what he was about to hear would change everything he thought he knew about that child and about himself. The restaurant seemed to have ceased to exist. The sound of cutlery, the soft music, the elegant conversations, everything suspended in an invisible silence when Sophia's mother stopped in front of the table. The millionaire felt his heart pounding in his chest with a force he hadn't known for years. The woman wore no striking makeup or expensive clothes. Her dress was simple, her hair pulled back practically. But her eyes, those eyes hadn't changed. They were the same ones that once looked at him with unconditional love. The same ones that asked him to stay. The same ones that filled with tears the day he decided to leave. She observed him without hatred, without shouting, without immediate reproaches, only with a mature sadness, like someone who has already cried all they could cry. "I didn't know destiny would be so ironic," she finally said. The millionaire didn't respond. Sophia looked from one to the other, not fully understanding the tension, but perceiving that something important was happening. "Mama, he let me sit down," the girl said with innocent pride. The woman nodded. "I saw." The millionaire felt the pieces beginning to fit, but he resisted accepting what his intuition was already screaming. "Do we know each other?" he asked, though deep down he knew the answer. The woman looked at him intently. "More than you imagine." The air grew denser. The millionaire slowly stood up. His mind traveled back to a stage he had decided to erase, to a small flat in a bustling HDB estate where love was bigger than money, to promises made without lawyers, to a woman who believed in him when he had nothing. But he did have something. Ambition. And as ambition grew, so did the distance. "It can't be," he finally murmured. The woman held his gaze. "Yes, it can." Sophia watched them curiously. "Mama, do you know him?" The woman took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, daughter." The millionaire felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The past wasn't knocking on the door. The past was sitting right in front of him. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. The woman took another step closer. "You left without looking back," she said, her voice firm but controlled. "You said it was temporary. You said you needed to grow. You said you would come back when everything was stable." The millionaire closed his eyes for an instant. Each phrase was an echo of decisions he had justified for years. "And while you grew," she continued, "I learned to survive." The restaurant remained in silence. No one dared to interrupt. Sophia looked at her mother, then at the millionaire. "Is he?" she asked in a thin voice. The woman didn't answer immediately. She looked directly into the millionaire's eyes. "You tell her." That challenge was more powerful than any accusation. The millionaire felt that pride, that armor that had protected him for so long, began to crack. He looked at Sophia. Those eyes, that way of tilting her head, that expression when she smiled shyly. There was something undeniable, something he could no longer ignore. "I didn't know," he whispered. The woman didn't raise her voice. "You didn't ask." That phrase was more painful than any shout, because it was true. He didn't ask, he didn't call, he didn't come back, he didn't investigate, he didn't want to know. He had chosen the comfort of ignorance. "Mama!" Sophia tugged gently at her dress. "Is he my papa?" Time stopped. The millionaire felt his heart pounding in his ears. The woman knelt in front of the child. "Yes, daughter." The word fell like a definitive sentence. Sophia looked at the millionaire with a mixture of surprise, hope, and confusion. "Really?" The millionaire couldn't hold her gaze because that word forced him to assume something he had avoided for 5 years. Responsibility. He wasn't just a successful entrepreneur, he wasn't just a powerful man, he was a father, and he hadn't been there. Sophia took a small step towards him. "Then why weren't you here?" The question carried no reproach. It carried innocence. But that innocence was more devastating than any adult accusation. The millionaire felt something break within his chest because he had no answer he could give to a 5-year-old. He couldn't talk about ambition. He couldn't talk about contracts. He couldn't explain wounded pride. He could only admit an uncomfortable truth. "Because I was a coward." The woman looked at him, surprised by his honesty. Sophia frowned slightly. "But I said someday my papa would be brave." The millionaire felt his eyes well up for the first time in years. "You're right," he said, his voice cracking. "And I'm trying to start now." The woman crossed her arms. "Trying doesn't erase 5 years." "I know." That was the first time he hadn't tried to justify himself. He didn't blame fate. He didn't blame work. He didn't blame anyone else. He took responsibility. The silence was profound. Sophia looked at her mother, then at the millionaire. "So, I'm not alone anymore?" That question was like a light cutting through the darkness. The millionaire knelt down to her level. "You should never have been." The woman looked away for a moment, holding back emotions she had learned to repress. "She doesn't know everything," she finally said. "She doesn't know the nights without food. She doesn't know about the medical consultations I couldn't afford. She doesn't know that my heart hurts not only from illness, but from abandonment." The millionaire felt that each word was a mirror of his decisions. "Are you sick?" he asked with genuine concern. She nodded. "I need surgery, but I didn't come to ask you for anything." That phrase hit him even harder. There was no demand, no manipulation, only truth. "I didn't know anything," he repeated, though he already understood that phrase would not absolve him. "You didn't want to know," she corrected softly. Sophia looked at the millionaire's face as if trying to memorize every detail. "You look like me?" she said with a small smile. The millionaire felt that affirmation was a gift and a responsibility at the same time. The restaurant slowly began to recover its sounds, but their table remained a world apart. "Where do you live?" he asked. The woman hesitated. Pride still existed. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," he replied firmly. "It's responsibility." The difference was enormous. The woman studied him intently. She wasn't looking for money. She was looking for truth. "If you're going to enter her life," she finally said, "you can't do it like someone signing a contract. You can't show up today and disappear tomorrow." The millionaire felt the weight of each word, because he knew that was his tendency. "I don't want to disappear again," he said with honesty. Sophia took his hand again. Then, "Stay." 3 words so simple, so powerful. The millionaire understood that this night was not chance, not charity, not coincidence. It was confrontation. Destiny had not brought him to this table to pay for a dinner. It had brought him to pay an emotional debt. But there was still something more, something the woman had not yet said, something that was still held back. And when that last truth came to light, the millionaire would have to decide if he was willing to lose his pride or lose everything again. Because the real test wouldn't be recognizing his daughter. It would be proving that he could be the father she deserved. And that decision was about to arrive. The silence that followed Sophia's words was not uncomfortable. It was decisive. The millionaire remained crouched in front of his daughter, feeling the weight of that small hand in his. It wasn't a fragile hand. It was a hand that had learned to hold itself up too soon. Sophia's mother remained standing, watching him with a mixture of caution and exhaustion. There was no hatred in her gaze, but neither was there trust. There was something more complex, a silent evaluation. She wasn't seeing the man who had knelt before her daughter. She was seeing the man who once promised to stay. "If you truly want to be in her life," she finally said, her voice firm but serene, "you can't do it halfway." The millionaire slowly stood up. He no longer felt like the owner of an empire. He felt like a man facing a moral examination. "I don't want to do it halfway," he replied. She looked at him with depth. "Then listen to me carefully." Sophia watched them in silence, perceiving that something important was about to be defined. "I won't accept money without commitment," the mother continued. "I won't allow you to appear as a hero for one night and disappear when the emotion fades." The millionaire did not interrupt. "She doesn't need a patron," she added. "She needs a father." Those words embedded themselves with surgical precision in the millionaire's chest. For years, he had solved problems by writing checks. He had fixed mistakes by paying compensation. He had bought silence, loyalty, and opportunities. But this was not a financial negotiation. It was a test of character. "What do you need from me?" he finally asked. She didn't hesitate. Presence. The word resonated with unexpected force. Presence at medical appointments. Presence on difficult nights. Presence when she asks why you weren't there before. Presence when she's afraid. The millionaire felt each phrase disarm a part of his ego. "And if you decide to leave again," she continued, "you won't just break her, you'll break me again." The restaurant had already returned to its usual rhythm, but for them, the world remained still. Sophia looked at the millionaire as if expecting a promise she didn't know how to formulate. "I'm not leaving," he said, with a conviction that surprised even himself. The mother studied him in silence. "Time will tell." That phrase was a clear line. Trust would not be immediate. The millionaire took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his agenda, not calculating risks, not evaluating profits. He was feeling, and that disoriented him more than any corporate crisis. "I need to see where you live," he finally said. She frowned slightly. "It's not a place you'd be proud of." "I didn't come for pride," he replied. "I came to assume what is mine." The mother looked at him for several seconds. There was sincerity, but also uncertainty. "All right," she finally said. Sophia smiled with contained joy. "Then, let's go, all three of us." That simple phrase carried enormous meaning. The three of us. The millionaire felt that word had a weight he had never considered. For years, he had lived in the singular. My company, my goals, my success. Now there was a plural that demanded commitment. My daughter, her mother, our responsibility. They left the restaurant under curious glances. Some whispered, others observed with judgment. But the millionaire looked at no one else. He walked beside Sophia, aware of every step. The girl took his hand without asking permission, and that naturalness moved him. There was no resentment in her, no reproach, only an openness that he didn't know if he deserved. As they walked through less lit streets, the contrast became evident. Luxury was left behind. Golden lights became flickering street lamps. The impeccable pavement gave way to uneven sidewalks. The millionaire felt that each step took him further from his comfort zone and closer to a truth he could not ignore. They arrived at an old HDB building with faded paint and windows that told stories of resilience. "Here," said the mother. They climbed narrow stairs. Sophia spoke enthusiastically. "Mama makes tasty soup when she can, and she reads me stories even when she's tired. And she says, the heart is healed with hope." The millionaire swallowed. This woman had not only raised his daughter alone, she had protected her innocence. They entered the small apartment. It was modest, but clean, tidy, well cared for. There were drawings taped to the wall, a small worn sofa, a simple table, no luxury. But there was something he didn't have in his mansion: warmth. The millionaire observed every detail, as if evaluating a reality he never wanted to look at. "It's not much," the mother said, anticipating judgment. "It's enough to show you fought," he replied. She looked at him in surprise. Sophia ran to a drawer and pulled out a drawing. "Look," she said excitedly. "I made it for when my papa came back." The millionaire felt the air stop. It was a simple drawing, 3 figures holding hands, a bright sun, a small house. Above, written in childish letters, "My family." The millionaire felt something break inside. There was a family drawn, a family that existed in his daughter's imagination, but which he had ignored in reality. "I saved it," Sophia said, "because I knew someday it would happen." The millionaire couldn't speak for a few seconds. The mother observed him, not seeking to move him, but trying to understand if he was grasping the magnitude of what he had lost. "You need an operation," he finally said, returning to the pending conversation. She nodded. "Yes, and it's not cheap. I'll take care of it." She gently raised her hand. "I don't just want you to pay." The millionaire looked at her, understanding what she was really asking. "I want you to be in the waiting room. I want you to explain to your daughter why Mama is going into surgery. I want that if something goes wrong, she isn't left alone." The millionaire felt that each word forced him to leave his old self behind. He couldn't solve that with money, only with real commitment. "I'll be there," he said. She held his gaze. Then, "Start now." Sophia approached and hugged the millionaire's legs. A spontaneous, natural gesture, without reservations. He hesitated for a second and then awkwardly hugged her back. He didn't know exactly how to do it, but he knew he didn't want to let her go. In that small apartment, far from luxury and cameras, the millionaire understood something fundamental. True power was not controlling markets. It was holding small hands when fear appeared. But there was still something more, something the mother had not yet said, a detail that would completely change how he understood the past. She sat down slowly on the sofa. "There's something you need to know." The millionaire looked at her intently. "When I left the hospital the day she was born, I tried to call you." The millionaire frowned. "I never received that call." She nodded. "I know, because someone blocked my number." The silence was immediate. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Your assistant back then told me you didn't want to know anything, that you were focused on an important business, that I shouldn't insist." The millionaire felt his blood run cold. He vaguely remembered that time, a crucial negotiation, an international trip, a series of filters on his phone to avoid distractions. "I never asked for that," he whispered. She looked at him with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "But you allowed it." That phrase was an unexpected blow. It wasn't just an external betrayal. It was a consequence of his own carelessness. He had delegated so much of his life that someone else decided what news reached him. And the most important news never did. The millionaire felt a mixture of rage and guilt. He couldn't entirely blame a third party. He had built a wall around his time, and that wall blocked what mattered most. "I need to know everything," he said firmly. She nodded. "Then prepare yourself, because what's coming isn't comfortable." The millionaire understood that the true story was just beginning. It wasn't just a reunion, not just a discovered daughter. It was a chain of ill-made decisions, a series of silences, a parallel life that grew without him. And now, he would have to decide if he was willing to rebuild from the ground up. Because loving wouldn't be enough, he would have to prove it. And the test was just beginning. The small apartment fell silent after that revelation. The number was blocked. The phrase continued to resonate in the millionaire's mind, like an uncomfortable echo he couldn't silence. For years, he had believed she had simply disappeared, that she had decided to move on with her life without him, that the silence was mutual. But now he understood that the silence was not accidental. It was a consequence of a life so insulated that not even the birth of his daughter managed to pierce the filters he himself had created. "I need to understand everything," he finally said, his voice low but firm. Sophia's mother sat carefully on the sofa, as if her body carried more weight than it appeared. "The day she was born," she began, "I tried to call you more than 10 times. The millionaire closed his eyes for an instant. 10 times, 10 opportunities that never reached him. "Then I went to your office," she continued. "Your assistant told me you were in an international meeting, that you couldn't be interrupted by personal matters." That phrase hit him with brutal clarity. Personal matters. His daughter had been categorized as a distraction. The millionaire felt a mixture of rage and shame. He remembered that negotiation perfectly, a multi-million-dollar deal that marked the beginning of his global expansion. He had given clear instructions not to receive unnecessary calls, and unknowingly, he had closed the door to the most important thing in his life. "I didn't know you were pregnant," he whispered. She shook her head slightly. "I told you before you left." He shook his head gently. "I don't remember." She nodded with painful serenity. "Because you were already thinking about your next trip." The silence was heavy. There were no shouts, no exaggerated drama, just a raw truth. The millionaire understood that this wasn't a conspiracy. It wasn't solely the fault of an ambitious assistant or a cold system. It was the result of misordered priorities. "When I understood that you weren't coming back," she continued, "I decided not to pursue you anymore. I didn't want my daughter to grow up feeling that her father didn't choose her. The millionaire felt his heart contract, because that was exactly the reality. He didn't choose her, not because he didn't want her, but because he never knew he should. But the effect was the same: absence. Sophia had fallen asleep on the small sofa, hugging her drawing, her innocence oblivious to the weight of that conversation. The millionaire watched her with a mixture of tenderness and guilt. "Why did you never try to find me afterward?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "Because love isn't begged for." That phrase was a lesson in itself. The millionaire had lived in a world where everything could be negotiated, where everything had a price, where everything could be adjusted with enough influence. But love doesn't work that way. "I didn't come tonight to confront you," she continued. "I came because Sophia insisted she wanted to sit in that restaurant. She said someday her father might be there." The millionaire felt a shiver. The girl hadn't chosen him by chance. She had recognized him. Without knowing him, she had felt something. "She always looked at men who resembled you," the mother said. "She always held on to hope." The millionaire clenched his fists. There was a part of him that wanted to rewind time, to go back to the day he decided to leave, to the moment he chose the contract instead of the conversation. But time doesn't negotiate, and he knew that better than anyone. "When did you know you were sick?" he asked carefully. She lowered her gaze to her hands. "A year ago. Heart problems. I need surgery soon." "And how have you managed all this alone?" She looked at him with a faint, tired smile. How do mothers do it when they have no choice? That answer held no heroism. It held reality. The millionaire slowly walked around the small apartment, observing the simple table, the old refrigerator, the medicines on the shelf. Every detail was tangible proof of a life that existed without him, a life that struggled without his support. "I'm going to transfer money right now," he said, taking out his phone. She stood up. "Wait." The millionaire looked at her. "I don't want this to start with a bank transfer." He frowned. "You need the surgery." "Yes," she replied, "but I need to know if you also need to change." That question left him still. He had never considered his own emotional need. He had always believed that success was enough. "What do you mean?" She looked at him with direct honesty. "If you only come to solve everything with money, you will leave again when you feel you've done your duty." The millionaire slowly put his phone away. "I don't want to do my duty. I want to stay." The words came out without calculation, and that scared him. Because staying implied giving up certain things, it implied reorganizing priorities, it implied making space for someone else, it implied vulnerability. "Then, start with something small," she said. "What?" "Stay tonight." The millionaire felt a slight dizziness. His schedule was packed. He had an early meeting, a scheduled flight, but for the first time, none of those things seemed urgent. He looked at Sophia asleep, her small, tranquil breathing, her hand still clutching the drawing of My Family. The millionaire understood that this was the first real test, not a surgery, not a transfer, but presence. "I'll stay," he finally said. She watched him, searching for any sign of doubt. She found none. "The sofa isn't comfortable," she warned. "I didn't come for comfort." That phrase marked an invisible turning point. That night, he wouldn't sleep in his king-size bed. There would be no turn-down service. There would be no controlled silence. There would be reality. As they prepared a blanket for him, the millionaire felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Humility. Not the feigned humility at conferences, not the strategic humility in front of investors. Real humility. He sat on the sofa next to Sophia. The girl stirred slightly in her sleep and, without opening her eyes, murmured, "Papa." The millionaire felt something unravel inside his chest. That simple murmur was worth more than any signed contract. The mother watched in silence from the small kitchen. She wasn't entirely convinced, but she had seen something different in him, something that hadn't been there before. The millionaire looked up at her. "I'm sorry," he finally said. It wasn't an elaborate speech, not a defense, not an extensive explanation. It was a simple apology, and in that simplicity, there was truth. She held his gaze. "Don't tell me," she replied. "Show her." The millionaire nodded. He knew words were insufficient. That night, as the small apartment darkened, the millionaire understood something fundamental. Success is not measured in figures, it is measured in absences. And he had accumulated too many. But there was still time, perhaps not to erase, but to rebuild. And as Sophia slept with her hand resting on his, the millionaire made the most important decision of his life. He wouldn't invest in another company. He would invest in staying. However, the real test wouldn't be that night. It would be the next day, when the corporate world called, when pressures returned, when his partners questioned his change. That's when it would be known if his transformation was a momentary emotion or the beginning of a new version of himself. And dawn was just a few hours away. Dawn timidly entered through the small apartment window. There were no silk curtains, no smart home automation programming the light, no assistants waiting for instructions, just a golden ray illuminating Sophia's sleeping face and the millionaire sitting on the sofa, awake for hours. He hadn't been able to sleep, not because the sofa was uncomfortable, but because reality weighed more than any luxury mattress. He watched his daughter breathe with that tranquility only children possess when they feel protected. And he understood something painful. She slept peacefully because she believed her father was there, but he knew he still hadn't proven anything. The mother came out of the room with slow steps. Her face showed the accumulated tiredness of years, but also a new expression, cautious hope. "You're not used to this," she said softly. The millionaire shook his head. "No." She walked to the small kitchen and began to prepare coffee. The aroma filled the space. "Today I have a medical appointment," she commented without looking at him. The millionaire looked up. "I'm coming with you." She paused for just a second before continuing to move. "You have work, not today." That answer was simple, but it marked an internal rupture. His phone vibrated in his pocket once, then again, then a third time. He didn't need to look at it to know what it was. Urgent messages, calls from partners, meeting reminders. The corporate world began to reclaim his attention. The millionaire slowly took it out and turned it off. The gesture was small, but symbolic. The mother observed him out of the corner of her eye. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "If I can't do this, then nothing else matters." Sophia began to stir on the sofa, slowly opened her eyes, and seeing him still there, smiled as if the world were in order. "Good morning, Papa." The word was no longer an unconscious whisper. It was conscious, deliberate. The millionaire felt that this simple phrase held more weight than any corporate title. "Good morning, daughter." The mother closed her eyes for a second, as if that scene both pained and healed her at the same time. After a simple breakfast, they left for the public clinic, where she had the appointment. The building didn't have the shine of the private centers the millionaire frequented. The chairs were uncomfortable, the walls needed paint, the atmosphere was charged with uncertainty, and there he sat waiting, without privileges, without preferential access, just as a man worried about someone he loved. The mother looked at him. "You don't have to stay for the whole consultation." "Yes, I do." Sophia played with a small doll she carried in her pocket. Every so often she would look up to make sure he was still there, and each time she saw him, she smiled. That smile was his constant test. When the mother was finally called, Sophia squeezed the millionaire's hand. "It's going to hurt her a lot." The millionaire swallowed. "We'll listen to what the doctor says, and then we'll see how to help her." He didn't promise impossibilities, didn't disguise reality, but he also didn't flee. The three of them entered. The doctor explained professionally that the surgery needed to be done soon, that the risk increased with time, that a quick decision was needed. The millionaire listened to each word as if it were a verdict. It wasn't a contract, it wasn't an investment, it was life. The mother maintained her composure, but her hand trembled slightly. Sophia looked at both of them with wide eyes. "Mama, will she get better?" The doctor spoke cautiously. "With the surgery, the probabilities are good." The millionaire took a breath. "Do it in the best hospital possible." The doctor looked up, surprised by the determination. "That comes at a high cost." The millionaire held his gaze. "It doesn't matter." The mother intervened. "It does matter." The millionaire looked at her. "I'm not buying absolution," he said firmly. "I'm doing what I should have done from the beginning." She held his gaze for a few seconds and nodded. The decision was made. But the real test came in that instant. His phone, which he had turned off, began to vibrate again as he turned it on to make a transfer. Dozens of messages. A critical meeting moved forward. An investment that depended on his physical presence. One of his partners wrote, "If you're not here today, we lose the deal." The millionaire felt the old reflex try to activate. That impulse to run, to prioritize business, to say, "This can't wait." But this time something was different. He looked at Sophia. She was drawing on a piece of paper from the consultation room. There were three figures again, holding hands, and this time the father's figure was closer. The millionaire understood that this was the true negotiation, not with partners, not with markets, but with his own coherence. He picked up the phone, wrote a brief message, "Will not be there. Family priority." He sent it. Immediate silence in the chat. Then an incredulous reply. "Since when?" The millionaire left the phone on the table. "Since today." He didn't say it aloud, but he felt it. The mother observed the gesture. "You just lost millions," she said calmly. The millionaire looked at her. "I already lost 5 years. That was more expensive." She didn't respond, but something in her expression changed. Respect. When they left the clinic, the air seemed different, not because the problems were resolved, but because the direction had changed. They walked in silence for a few minutes. Sophia held both their hands, an imperfect family, but trying to be real. "Will you stay when Mama is in surgery?" the girl asked. The millionaire knelt in front of her. "I'm not going anywhere." The mother watched him intently. She knew words were easy. The difficult part would be to sustain them over time. But she had seen something new that morning. She had seen renunciation, she had seen choice, she had seen coherence, and that wasn't easily faked. That night, as they returned to the apartment, the millionaire felt something he had never experienced in a boardroom. Fear. Not fear of losing money, not fear of failing publicly, but fear of failing as a father again. That fear didn't paralyze. It propelled him. They sat down for a simple dinner. Sophia spoke excitedly about school, about a friend, about a story she wanted him to hear. The millionaire listened with absolute attention. He didn't interrupt, didn't check the clock, didn't review messages. Presence. The mother watched him from the kitchen. There was still pain. There were open wounds, but there was also something unexpected. Hope. When Sophia went to sleep, the apartment fell silent. The millionaire and the mother stood facing each other. "This doesn't erase the past," she said softly. "I know, and I don't forgive you yet." He nodded. "I didn't come asking for immediate forgiveness." She looked at him intensely. "And I came to see if you could stay." The millionaire took a deep breath. "I don't know how to do it perfectly, but I want to learn." The sincerity was new in him, no strategy, no prepared speech, just truth. She nodded slowly. "Then let's start tomorrow." The millionaire understood that reconstruction would not be an event. It would be a process, day after day, choice after choice. And as he looked at the small room where Sophia slept peacefully, he understood that the greatest wealth he had ignored for years was just a few steps away. But something was still missing. The surgery, the recovery, the adaptation, and a final test that would challenge his transformation, because the outside world would not easily accept his change, and soon he would have to defend this new priority against those who never understood the value of staying. The most difficult battle would not be against the past, it would be against the old version of himself. And that battle was just beginning. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. 7 days, that seemed like a short time for the world, but an eternity for someone trying to rebuild what he had destroyed with absence. The millionaire did not return to his mansion that week. He canceled meetings, delegated decisions, reorganized his agenda. His partners began to worry. Some called directly, others sent ambiguous messages. One even appeared, unannounced, in front of the modest HDB building, where he now spent most of his time. "What are you doing?" the partner asked, incredulous, looking around with evident discomfort. The millionaire held his gaze without hesitation. "What I should have done years ago," the partner frowned. "You're risking enormous investments for a personal situation." The millionaire took a deep breath. Before, that phrase would have made him react. He would have felt challenged. He would have defended his position with figures and arguments. But now, he didn't need to convince anyone. "It's not a personal situation," he replied with calm firmness. "She's my daughter." The partner was silent for a few seconds. "You never spoke of a daughter?" The millionaire held his gaze. "I was never there for her." The silence was uncomfortable. The partner tried one last pressure. "The market doesn't wait. If you miss this opportunity, it may not come back." The millionaire looked towards the apartment window where Sophia was drawing with absolute concentration. "Some opportunities never come back," he finally said. "I already lost it once." The partner understood that he wouldn't change his decision and left. The millionaire closed the door calmly. That was the real test, not the surgery, not the money. It was upholding his choice in front of the world that had always defined him. That night, while helping Sophia with a school assignment, the girl looked up. "Are you going to leave when Mama goes to the hospital?" The millionaire placed the pencil on the table. "No, even if work calls you?" The question was innocent, but precise. The millionaire smiled gently. "Work can wait." Sophia tilted her head. "Mama says adults sometimes say that, but they don't always keep their promises." The millionaire felt the sting. It wasn't an accusation, it was experience. "Then look at me," he said, "and you decide if I keep it." Sophia watched him for a few seconds as if evaluating sincerity, then smiled. "I believe you." That trust moved him more than any business pressure, because it was fragile and could easily be broken. The days passed between medical appointments, preparations, and simple moments. The millionaire learned to prepare a simple breakfast. He learned to read stories with exaggerated intonation. He learned to listen to stories without looking at his watch. Each gesture seemed small, but for him, it was revolutionary. The mother observed everything cautiously. One night, while Sophia slept, they sat facing each other. "I didn't think you'd stay," she admitted. "Neither did I," he replied with honesty. She looked at him intently. "What changed?" The millionaire took a few seconds to answer. "I discovered that everything I built made no sense if I didn't know for whom I was building it." She lowered her gaze. "You always wanted to win," he nodded. "But I didn't understand that winning also meant staying." That phrase hung in the air. The surgery came. The hospital was modern, thanks to the millionaire's decision to move her to a specialized center in Singapore. The mother was outwardly calm, but her hands revealed fear. Sophia held the millionaire's hand tightly. "It's going to hurt her a lot." The millionaire knelt down to her level. "The doctors know what they're doing, and I'll be here the whole time." The mother looked at him before entering the operating room. There were no grand speeches, just a gaze laden with history. "Don't leave her alone," she said. "Never again," he replied. The door closed. The wait began. Hours that felt like days. The millionaire didn't look at his phone, didn't check emails, didn't reply to messages. He sat beside Sophia, explaining what he could without lying to her. He told her stories, talked about stars, promised her that no matter what, she wouldn't be alone. In the midst of the wait, his phone vibrated insistently. It was the same critical negotiation he had postponed. A final message appeared. "Last chance. Confirm your presence now." The millionaire looked at the screen. That decision would define not only his career, but his coherence. He looked at Sophia. The girl was leaning on his shoulder, trying to be brave. The millionaire turned off his phone again. No drama, no doubt, just choice. Hours later, the doctor came out. The surgery was successful. Sophia threw herself into the millionaire's arms. "I told you she would be okay." The millionaire felt tears he couldn't hold back. They weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of relief. The mother was moved to recovery. When they could finally see her, the millionaire held her hand. "It went well," he whispered. She slowly opened her eyes, looked at him, and for the first time in years, she didn't see distance. She saw presence. Days later, while she was recovering at home, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at the apartment. It was from one of his main partners. It said that despite his absence, they decided to maintain the agreement, that his stance on family had generated unexpected respect, that even investors valued leaders with clear principles. The millionaire read the letter in silence. He hadn't expected that consequence, but he understood something profound. When you choose what is right, the world may take time to understand it, but it eventually respects it. Sophia approached. "Is it from work?" He nodded. "Are they going to scold you?" The millionaire smiled. "No, not this time." The girl hugged him. "Then, you won." The millionaire looked at her with tenderness. "Yes, but not because of work." She frowned with curiosity. "Then why?" He held her with firmness and gentleness at the same time. "Because I stayed." Sophia smiled as if that answer was enough, and it was. That night, as the three of them dined together at a small table, but full of conversation, the millionaire understood that transformation was not a one-time event, it was a daily decision. He had passed the most difficult test, choosing himself as a father. But something still remained. It wasn't enough to stay. He had to build. And in that small apartment, among children's drawings and medicines neatly arranged on a shelf, the millionaire knew that the true wealth he had ignored for years was just a few steps away. But still, something was missing. The surgery, the recovery, the adaptation, and a last test that would test his transformation, because the outside world would not easily accept his change, and soon he would have to defend this new priority against those who never understood the value of staying. The most difficult battle would not be against the past. It would be against the old version of himself. And that battle was just beginning. The following months were not perfect. There was no magical transformation, no instant reconciliation. There was no fairy tale life. There was reality. There was adaptation. There were uncomfortable conversations. There were memories that hurt. But above all, there was presence. Sophia's mother recovered little by little. The surgery had been successful, but the process required patience. The millionaire reorganized his life without publicly announcing it. He reduced travel, delegated strategic functions, stopped attending events he once considered indispensable. His partners noticed the change. Some distanced themselves, others were surprised. A few even began to imitate him. Because when a leader changes his priorities, something moves around him. But the deepest change did not happen in the corporate world. It happened in the small apartment, where every afternoon Sophia ran to the door when she heard his footsteps. Papa arrived. That phrase became the most valuable sound in his life. The millionaire learned things he had never considered important. He learned that a school assignment can be more urgent than a board meeting, that listening to a story repeated 5 times has more impact than a conference, that a spontaneous hug can heal years of distance. He learned to be present without an agenda, to stay without checking his watch, to listen without interrupting. One afternoon, while Sophia was drawing at the table, she looked up. "Do you remember when you let me sit with you in the restaurant?" The millionaire smiled. "Yes, I already knew it was you." The millionaire tilted his head. "How?" Sophia shrugged with childlike naturalness. "Because you looked sad, and Mama says sad people sometimes just need someone to truly look at them." The millionaire felt a knot in his throat. For years, no one had truly looked at him. They had admired him, needed him, respected him, but they hadn't seen him. This child did, and that changed everything. Over time, the millionaire decided something more. He not only wanted to help from within his home, he wanted to transform what he had learned into something bigger. He began to fund programs for absent fathers. He created guidance spaces for men who had prioritized work over family. He invested in public clinics that served mothers without resources. But this time he didn't do it for image. There were no press conferences, no plaques with his name. There was silent action. One night, as the 3 of them walked through a nearby park, Sophia took both their hands. "Now we really are a family." The mother and the millionaire looked at each other. There were scars, there was history, there were mistakes, but there was also decision. "Yes," he replied, "because now we choose each other every day." Sophia smiled, satisfied. The millionaire understood something essential. Being a father was not a title. It was a daily practice. It was not an event. It was constancy. One afternoon, while organizing boxes to move to a larger, not luxurious, but comfortable HDB flat, Sophia found her old drawing, the one with the 3 figures holding hands. She held it proudly. "Look," she said. "Now it really looks like it." The millionaire looked at the drawing. The father's figure was no longer distant. He was in the center, firmly holding both hands. "Thank you for believing in me," he whispered. Sophia frowned with tenderness. "I didn't believe. I knew." That childlike certainty was the greatest gift he received. With time, the old apartment was left behind. Not out of shame, not out of rejection, but because now they could grow together. The new home had no excesses. It had balance. The millionaire was still successful, but he was no longer obsessed. He had learned to say no to unnecessary meetings. He had learned that money is a tool, not an identity. He had learned that absence is more costly than any financial loss. One night, while Sophia slept, the mother approached the millionaire. "Do you know what surprised me the most?" she asked. "What? That you didn't try to defend yourself when you knew the truth." The millionaire took a deep breath because there was no defense possible. She nodded, and that was what changed everything. Humility was not weakness. It was maturity. The millionaire understood that true leadership is not exercised in boardrooms. It is exercised in intimate decisions, in staying when it is easier to leave, in listening when it is more comfortable to ignore, in taking responsibility when it is tempting to justify. Years later, when Sophia was older, a teacher asked her to write an essay about the person who had surprised her the most in her life. Sophia wrote, "My papa surprised me because he chose to stay. He didn't talk about money, he didn't talk about businesses, he didn't talk about gifts, he talked about presence." When the millionaire read those lines, he understood that his greatest legacy would not be buildings or investments. It would be that phrase, "He chose to stay." Sometimes we believe that success is measured by what we accumulate, by what we achieve, by what we show the world, but life silently evaluates us differently. It asks us, were you there when someone needed you? Did you choose to stay when it was uncomfortable? Did you truly look at those around you? The millionaire in this story had everything, except the most important thing. And it was a simple question asked by a hungry and hopeful child that forced him to awaken. "Papa, can I eat with you?" That question wasn't just about food. It was about companionship, about presence, about love. Because in the end, we don't remember how much we earned. We remember who was there. If today you have the opportunity to stay, do it. If you can call, call. If you can listen, listen. Because time doesn't turn back, but decisions can change the future. And sometimes the greatest act of love is not to promise, it is to stay.